A single mother with a big heart.
If you needed anything, she was always there.
She was a sweet girl. Everybody loved her.
Is the victim of a bizarre murder.
Duct tape had been wrapped around her head about 14 times.
This is nothing I had ever seen before or even heard of before.
Leaving her young son as the only witness.
A 4-year-old child had been just mere feet away, his mother being killed.
Investigators focus on the men in her life.
This guy, he wouldn't look at us. He was more nervous than normal.
And that polygraph test, he passed. It was frustrating as hell.
She was using Norma's house for these sexual liaisons.
To unveil a killer hiding in plain sight.
Of everyone we dealt with, he was maybe the coolest customer of the bunch.
People didn't see that inner demon. He was an unexpected killer.
It just blows you away.
Port Hueneme, California, a peaceful beach town on the Pacific coast.
It's a hidden gem. Port Hueneme is about 60 miles north of LA. It's a completely different environment. It's a lot more relaxed.
It's a quiet town, and it's a town that has, for a long time, a ridiculously low crime rate and very rarely a homicide.
But the tranquility of the seaside community is shattered one summer morning when police get an urgent call.
On June 1st, 1993, it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, our dispatch received a call of a possible homicide.
An ex-husband had called up and said that his ex-wife had been murdered.
We hadn't had a homicide in over 3 years. It took me a second to realize, okay, this is real.
Detectives arrive to begin the investigation, but nothing can prepare them for the scene inside.
I got inside the house, and then it was like, oh my God. This is just too bizarre for words. She's laying on the floor, head encased in duct tape. It had been partially cut away, but it appeared as though someone had tried to wrap her like a mummy.
It went from the top of her forehead to the chin.
It was just incredibly strange. This is nothing I had ever seen before or even heard of before.
And some rigor mortis had set in the back portion of her body because she was laying on the back. Usually rigor mortis takes a number of hours to show up. We estimated that the victim probably died in the early morning hours. When I saw that duct tape, the first thing that entered my mind was this was somebody she knew. Whoever did it didn't want to have her look at them while they were committing the crime.
Looking to unravel the mystery of this bizarre murder, detectives turn to the victim's ex-husband, who claims to have discovered the body.
At the house, the ex-husband was there, his brother was there, and 2 younger sons were there.
The ex-husband, Tony, identifies the victim as 32-year-old Norma Rodriguez, mother to 2 boys, Andrew, 11 years old, and Austin, 4 years old.
Tony, he said that he had come over to the house to pick up the kids to take them to school, which was his regular practice.
The 2 boys were still asleep in their beds when Tony realized what had happened to their mother. He told them to stay in their room until police arrived.
Tony, his brother Hector, and the 2 sons were transported to the Port Hueneme Police Department, where they were going to be interviewed separately. Tony and Hector were first at the house, and we needed to determine what happened.
Police continue to comb through the house looking for clues.
It was not a scene of extreme violence. There wasn't blood anywhere. There weren't a lot of things overturned.
In the bedroom, we located her purse, and it was intact. There wasn't anything that seemed to be missing.
This was not like a burglary that had gone wrong.
There's no sign of forced entry into the home. Then, something else catches the detective's eye.
I noticed a set of keys that were on the floor. They were in an unusual location, close to her body. We checked and confirmed they were Norma's house keys.
But why were Norma's keys lying next to her body? As investigators finish processing the scene, Norma's sister, Auralia, arrives.
I was supposed to pick her up because we were going to go looking for a car for her. And I had been calling her. And I drove to her house. That's when I saw the yellow tape. I saw the police department there, and that's what they told me would happen. And my worst nightmares, did I ever think that this would happen to my sister? It is horrible, horrible.
Norma Rodriguez was born and raised in rural Texas.
We're 7 sisters and 1 brother. She was the middle child, and, I was really close to Norma. She was very quiet, very reserved, a very big heart. If you needed anything, she was always there.
I first met Norma in 1975 in junior high school. We were 14 years old, and we became friends right away. Well, we used to hang out together and just go everywhere together. She could be feisty, but she was a sweet girl. Everybody loved her.
After high school, Norma moved to Oxnard, California for college and soon fell for another student named Tony.
She loved him. She just loved being with him.
Their college romance became more serious, and 2 years later in 1982, Tony popped the question. They soon had their first son, Andrew, and their second son, Austin, arrived 7 years later.
She was just a great mom. Norma was very devoted to her boys. Her boys were her life.
But in 1991, after almost 10 years together, Tony and Norma's marriage became strained.
Tony was really never around.
She was getting into arguments and fights with Tony, asking him to provide for them. She realized it would be an easier life for her if she just went on her own without Tony. And that's what she did.
Later that year, Norma moved with her sons to the neighboring town of Port Hueneme. She got a job at a local retail store and started a new chapter in her life.
Being a single mom, people might think that's a hard job, but she enjoyed it. And it was hard for her, but she was happy.
Who would want to take the life of this loving mother, and in such a bizarre way? Later that day, at police headquarters, detectives began to interview Norma's ex-husband, Tony Rodriguez, and his brother, Hector.
As the first 2 parties to the scene, the investigators had to look at them.
The detectives asked Tony about how he found Norma earlier that day.
Tony, he said that he had knocked on the door, but Norma didn't answer. Sons, Andrew and Austin, were asleep. The door was locked, so then he used a credit card in order to slip the lock, and he was able to open the front door.
When Tony and Hector entered the living room, they saw Norma lying on the floor, her face wrapped in duct tape.
Hector told us that he cut the tape because they didn't know whether she was deceased or not, and they wanted to try to make it easier for her to breathe. He's the one that had the scissors in his possession, and he's the one that decided to cut the tape off of her face.
We thought, wow, that's a little strange. Why is this guy doing this? Why is he messing up our evidence? Hector told us that the body was still somewhat warm. And that didn't make sense because by that time she had full rigor mortis. I mean, she had obviously been deceased for a number of hours. I just wasn't buying it.
Investigators are skeptical. Is Hector misleading police because the 2 men have something to hide? They hone in on Tony and Hector as possible suspects.
We don't know these people. We don't know what they're capable of.
Tony and Hector are suspicious. And Tony, being Norma's ex, he was right at the top of our list.
Coming up, detectives broaden their hunt for a possible killer.
We've got countless potential witnesses, countless potential suspects, interviews with co-workers.
We didn't know who it was. I just wanted him off the streets.
Investigators suspect a love interest from Norma's past has something to hide.
It was a brief but intense relationship.
It was that selfishness, that narcissistic quality that would cause him to end someone else's life.
And what police uncover shocks everyone.
All this time, were we dealing with a true sociopath and, couldn't see it?
Mother of two, Norma Rodriguez, has been found murdered with her head wrapped in duct tape. Less than 24 hours into the investigation, detectives are interviewing their first suspect, starting with her ex-husband, Tony Rodriguez.
In a case like this, statistics will show you that an overwhelming amount of the time, it's going to be that significant other or former significant other who ends up being your suspect.
Investigators ask Tony about his relationship with Norma in the weeks leading up to her death.
At the time, Tony said that they had been separated for a couple of years. I don't believe they had filed for divorce yet, but they were living separately, and Tony had visitation rights. They weren't close friends anymore, but they tried to maintain the friendship for the boys.
But police have a different account from Norma's family.
We learned that shortly before the homicide, there were some conflicts.
Norma, she was upset at the fact that he would come make excuses to come over with the boys, but he would end up wanting to stay there. She used to complain about that. I said, don't let him in. He doesn't have the right to come into your house. And she was a little timid when it came down to Tony.
According to loved ones, Tony couldn't accept that Norma was moving on. Detectives press him about his whereabouts in the hours surrounding Norma's murder.
Tony said that on May the 30th, early afternoon, he talked with Norma and asked if their son Andrew could stay with him. Tony had tickets to an Angels game the next day, and so they agreed that that was okay.
Tony says Andrew was dropped back home the next night. At the time, Tony never entered the house. He found Norma's body the next day. Did Norma's ex innocently walk into the crime scene that morning, or had something more sinister happened?
The potential motive with him was he wanted the kids. Maybe one thing led to another, and he lost control.
In a room nearby, police questioned Tony's brother Hector, since he was with him when Norma's body was found. They ask where he and Tony went after dropping Norma's son at his mom's.
Hector, he said that they had been at his residence with other family members in the city of Oxnard. And when we interviewed those family members, they corroborated what Tony and Hector told us.
Knowing their alibis are far from concrete, detectives ask Tony and Hector to take polygraph tests.
The results of the tests were that they were being honest in stating that they did not know anything about the homicide.
With no hard evidence to hold them, investigators are forced to let the two men go. News of Norma's death quickly spreads through the small community.
When I found out about her being murdered like that, I had told my cousin that I had just talked to her. It can't be true because I just talked to her. It was true.
At the police station, detectives received the results of the autopsy.
The cause of death was established as manual strangulation. Norma wasn't a tiny woman. Whoever did this had to possess significant upper body strength.
Some important details emerge about the duct tape.
The length of it was approximately 20 feet and had been wrapped around her head about 14 times.
The duct tape was examined and there were skin cells that were discovered. But in 1993, DNA technology was in its infancy. You had to have a fairly significant sample size in order to potentially get a result from it. In Norma's case, they didn't have nearly enough in these samples.
To find out who did this, we have to dig deeper.
Searching for new leads, detectives hope Norma's 11-year-old son, Andrew, can help. With Tony's consent, the detectives talk with him at the station.
When you're interviewing any type of a witness, it's a difficult process, and you have to understand that. When you're interviewing a child, it's extremely difficult. We interviewed Andrew, and we just wanted to try to get as much information as we could from the date of the homicide. Andrew had gone to a baseball game with his father and his uncle. Later at night, Andrew was dropped off at the house, and the house was dark.
Andrew walked up to the front door, found it was locked. He went around to his bedroom, saw that the window was open, and crawled in.
Then, Andrew shares a disturbing detail told to him by his younger brother.
When Andrew came into the bedroom, 4-year-old Austin had said, "Mommy has a Band-Aid on her face." That didn't register immediately with Andrew, and so he went to bed. And it wasn't until morning that Andrew found out exactly what Austin meant by a Band-Aid. It just ripped at your heart knowing that a 4-year-old child had been just mere feet away from his mother being killed. And at one point he had come out, he had seen his mother's body. That just ripped at me a lot.
What else had Norma's youngest son, Austin, seen? Detectives decide to speak to the 4-year-old.
At first, he was withdrawn. He really didn't want to talk about it, which was understandable. I knew that because he's 4 years old, and I couldn't have gone on much longer than I did. And I knew that I needed to stop. But then he mentioned a man by the name of Corey.
He brought up the name Corey as someone who was over at the house at that time. Now we've got this person who might end up being our prime suspect.
But who was Corey? Had he killed Norma? Did the single mom's youngest son just solve her murder?
We've got to run it down as far as it goes.
Police are investigating the bizarre murder of single mother Norma Rodriguez. Her youngest son, Austin, says he saw a man named Corey at their home around the time of the murder.
At that time, we had no idea who Corey was, but it was something that had to be checked out.
Detectives learn from the family that Corey could be Corey Davis, one of Norma's co-workers. So they head to her workplace.
First step was find out, to what extent Corey knew Norma, if they socialized, if they were friends away from work, and so forth.
Corey was more nervous than normal. In talking with him, he wouldn't look at us. He kept staring down, not tuning in or paying attention.
Corey's unusual behavior during their conversation alarms investigators.
He did not like being talked to and having to answer anything.
They question Corey about his relationship with Norma.
He stated that he would interact with Norma at work, but they weren't that close with each other, and they didn't have any interactions beyond that.
Detectives want to know if he was at Norma's house near the time of her murder, as young Austin claimed.
He made it pretty clear that he wasn't at the house at that time. Instead, he said the night of the homicide he was at home. The only people who were there at home with him were his parents. We needed to find out how much of what he was telling us was, provably true.
While officers are sent to check Corey's alibi, detectives speak to Norma's other coworkers, starting with her friend, Beatrice.
Beatrice came to Norma's house on Sunday, the day before the homicide. Norma had a get-together, a small barbecue at her house for several of her coworkers.
Police ask Beatrice if she remembers anything unusual about the day of the barbecue.
Beatrice said that while she was there, suddenly Norma can't find her keys anymore. And they ended up searching all over Norma's house, trying to figure out what happened to Norma's keys.
They didn't find them, and then they're laying beside her body, beside her house at the time she's found. We figured someone had taken her keys, and that's how they were able to enter the house.
It's a significant lead. Does this mean the killer stole the keys at Norma's barbecue? Detectives renew their focus on her inner circle.
From everything we knew, this was a pretty personal crime. We had a certain confidence that the killer knew Norma.
At the police station, investigators discover information they received from Corey Davis has some holes.
One of the things we do with everyone is we find out what their addresses are, their date of birth, everything else. And with Corey Davis, one of the things we noticed was that his address he gave us was not the address where he was actually living. So there was a discrepancy there.
Why would Corey withhold that information from detectives? They wonder what else he's hiding.
But at this point in time, Corey jumped out at us as this is the one we need to concentrate on.
Police bring Corey in for an interview, but he's far from helpful.
He's like, well, I don't want to be involved in this. Well, I understand that, but like it or not, you are part of this case. If you want to be eliminated from the suspect pool, the best way to do that is to cooperate with us.
Detectives share details of the crime with Corey to observe his reaction.
With the information that we were giving to him, he was obviously upset and he took it really hard.
Corey denies any involvement in Norma's death. They ask him to take a polygraph test.
He submitted to the test, and he passed.
All detectives have tying Corey to the crime scene is a statement from Norma's 4-year-old son. But police know he could be mistaken, given his young age and traumatic experience.
At that point, Corey worked his way down the ladder of possible suspects dramatically.
1 week into the investigation, detectives are out of leads. They look at who else was at Norma's barbecue the day before she was killed. Friends tell them about a former coworker named Warren Mackey.
Warren Mackey was a previous co-worker of Norma's, and also he lived in fairly close proximity to her.
Warren and Norma hit it off and became friends.
They worked together for a while, and the work relationship became a social relationship. But it appeared that Warren had something more than just a friendship interest in Norma.
I remember Norma telling me that there was a guy there that she used to work with, and he was always trying to talk to her and trying to ask her out.
Talking to Norma's coworkers, detectives learned that Warren pursued Norma, but she wasn't interested in him romantically.
Norma told Beatrice and some of the other people that she felt that Warren wanted more than to be friends and that she wasn't interested in that. She tried to curtail any attempts that he may have made to ask her out. Some of the employees that we talked with felt that Warren wasn't real pleased with that. He liked Norma and that he wanted the relationship a little bit more than what it was.
But Norma still tried to maintain their friendship.
She noticed he was kind of like an outcast, just very private. So she tried to include him in the group. She didn't want to leave him out.
As detectives look closer at the quiet coworker, the information they uncover is concerning.
Started picking up little details about him at that point. There were some people who said, yeah, good guy, he was okay to work with. But there were enough people who pointed out that he was a little weird and had made some overtures to Norma, enough to make us want to look into this a little further.
But did Warren's workplace crush make him a killer?
The nature of the relationship was of interest to us. We're going to have a conversation with Warren Mackey.
Police investigating the murder of single mother Norma Rodriguez are questioning her former coworker, Warren Mackey. Detectives have learned that Warren may have been more than a doting colleague. They're trying to determine if he's connected to this brutal crime.
In our first encounter with Warren Mackey, there was nothing that seemed overtly suspicious or evasive or anything about him.
Detectives ask Warren about his feelings for Norma.
The impression that Warren Mackey gave us was that, his relationship with Norma Rodriguez was pretty casual. They didn't see quite as much of each other because they were no longer working with each other, but they socialized a lot.
Warren said that they were close, but it was only a close friendship. He never had romantic feelings for Norma.
He had tried to present himself to Norma as someone to lean on, someone to talk to. I'm here for you.
But investigators aren't fully buying it.
We felt that Warren liked Norma and that he wanted to make the relationship closer than it already was.
Then, Warren reveals a detail that grabs investigators' attention.
He had helped out Norma with, a couple little things around the house. And one of the things that he mentioned was that the kids had a small basketball hoop and it had somehow gotten broken and that he had fixed it. And what really kind of set off an alarm was the fact that he had fixed it with duct tape.
This is the first time in the investigation that anybody's mentioned duct tape or someone possessing duct tape.
Detectives drilled down on when Warren last saw Norma.
Warren said that he had been in the presence of Norma at the barbecue the day before the homicide. By the time things had wrapped up for the evening, it was essentially just him and Norma there, and they had just kicked back and watched TV for a while. This made him one of the last people who could have or would have seen Norma alive.
Had the former coworker made advances on Norma, then attacked her when she turned him down? Detectives ask where Warren was on the night of the murder.
Warren said that on May the 31st, close to Norma's homicide, he and his roommate and his roommate's girlfriend, they went to a nightclub in Santa Barbara till about 1:30, and then they came back to where they were living at in Oxnard. They talked for a short while, and then everybody went to bed. We drove to Oxnard, and we ended up talking with his roommate and her girlfriend who had gone with him for the night, and they corroborated his story as far as them going to Santa Barbara, closing the nightclub, and then getting back probably between 1:30 and 2 in the morning.
Could Warren have had time to drive to Port Hueneme and kill Norma after arriving home from a late night out with friends? Warren agrees to take a polygraph.
And he passed it, stating that he knew nothing about the homicide and he knew no one who would have killed her.
With nothing concrete tying him to the crime, police let Warren go. But before he leaves, Warren remembers Norma had problems with a man she was dating almost a year ago, named Daniel Garcia.
As the investigation continued, we started interviewing a number of people about Daniel. We found out that Daniel Garcia was Norma's boyfriend for a short period of time.
They met at a party. Norma had a strong attraction to the charming mechanic.
It was a brief but intense relationship, lasted a few months.
She told me about Daniel, that she really cared about him a lot. They would do fun things together, and she always had a good time with him.
Friends tell police Daniel ended the relationship, blindsiding Norma.
Daniel had approached Norma and essentially told her that he wanted to go back with a former girlfriend. But Norma was affected quite a bit by the breakup.
Then, detectives learned that the relationship was turbulent.
There was some fraying in the relationship, and there were some conflicts. Now, that sends up some big red flags. There was one coworker who mentioned that they had witnessed a fairly heated argument between Norma and Daniel.
Daniel came in while she was working. For whatever reason it started, they had a verbal altercation that was witnessed by other people. It shows there was hostile feelings on the part of Daniel Garcia.
When detectives dig deeper into Daniel and Norma's relationship, they learn he visited Norma at home about 2 weeks before her murder.
Norma confided to her close friend she was involved with him before her death.
With a history of conflict in the relationship, did an argument turn deadly?
This is big. Any big fight that went on, that was problematic.
Detectives are closing in on their new suspect.
This could be our guy. We have to find out if he could have committed this crime.
The investigation into the murder of single mother Norma Rodriguez is heating up. Police have a new suspect in their sights, an ex-boyfriend, Daniel Garcia.
One of the things that we learned about the relationship between Daniel and Norma was that there were some conflicts. That sends up some red flags.
Daniel agrees to come to the police station for questioning.
Norma really had no confrontations. She was very Mild-mannered, the fact that she was getting into verbal altercations was unusual.
When detectives ask Daniel about his relationship with Norma, he denies any problems.
Daniel said that he wanted to go back with a former girlfriend. And so they broke up and went their separate ways. But they were still able to be somewhat friends, and he would stop by on occasion.
Detectives confront him about the heated argument with Norma at her workplace almost a year earlier.
At the time, Norma learned that he had had other relationships, and it was a problem. She was pretty upset by that.
She still had feelings for Daniel.
Had Norma attempted to restart their relationship, but instead wound up in a fight that spiraled out of control.
During his interview, Daniel told us that he saw Norma but didn't have an argument.
Detectives asked Daniel where he was the night Norma was killed.
He stated that he was at home with other family members watching TV, and then he went to bed. We talked with other family members, and that alibi was corroborated, but family members will lie for other family members. Sometimes they won't be perfectly honest with what they know, and it's extremely difficult to put weight on that.
Like previous suspects, Daniel is subjected to a polygraph.
And he passed.
With no evidence connecting the ex-lover to the crime, police let him go. It's another disappointing dead end.
After a couple of weeks of going through this, talking to countless potential witnesses, countless potential suspects, neighborhood canvasses, interviews with co-workers, polygraph examinations, it was frustrating as hell.
That was really, really hard on my family. We did not have an answer to who killed Norma. I just wanted not only justice for Norma, I was very concerned for any woman out there. We didn't know who it was. It could be someone that just passed me by. I didn't know. I just wanted him off the streets.
1 month into the investigation, the pressure continues to mount on police to solve the case.
We would get calls from the media every day. Every place we went in the community, they would ask us what was going on, and it was a lot of pressure.
Then, a surprising development. Norma's family contacts police with new information about Beatrice, Norma's coworker and friend.
It turns out that Beatrice was having an affair, and she was using Norma's house as a location for these sexual liaisons. Norma knew about it and in fact condoned it and gave her a copy of her house key.
But why hadn't Beatrice disclosed this detail to police earlier?
We confronted Beatrice with this information. Initially, huge wave of embarrassment. But she laid it out on the line. She told us, the when, the how many times.
Detectives question whether the secret rendezvous led to Norma's murder.
Now we've got other people who had, either continued access to the house. Previously, they were on the periphery of this case. Now they've moved right to the center of it.
One person detectives immediately turn to is Beatrice's husband, who also knew Norma. Had he gone after Norma for helping his wife have a secret affair?
And now, suddenly, Beatrice's husband, he's potentially in the suspect pool. We have to find out if he has an alibi and if we can corroborate it.
He apparently didn't know his wife was having an extramarital affair in Norma's house.
That was not the most comfortable thing to do from an investigative standpoint, but it still had to be done. And, the guy was crushed. He was absolutely crushed.
Detectives question Beatrice's husband about his whereabouts on the night of Norma's murder.
He told us that he had been at work late that evening. We talked to a lot of his co-workers. Everything about this man was genuine.
6 months into the investigation of the murder of Norma Rodriguez, detectives worry the trail has gone cold.
We're no closer to narrowing it down than we were on day one.
This case was very mind-boggling. You build up things that, wow, this is going to be great, it's coming together, and then it falls apart. As time progressed, the leads started falling off. It was tough. It was really tough.
Months turn to years. For nearly a decade, the case is at a standstill. But Norma's family doesn't give up.
Every year, we would call the police department for any updates, any new leads or anything. We kept it active. We didn't want this case forgotten.
During this entire investigation, I had the picture of Norma Rodriguez on my desk. I swore to her that I would never give up trying to find out who was responsible.
Then, 10 years to the day Norma was killed. An astonishing break in the case.
Worker with a crime lab. He had a lot of the evidence that we secured in the Norma homicide. He called me and he says, we have a match. We have a match on the DNA.
My head just like exploded with 1,000 thoughts. It was just nuts.
I remember receiving the phone call and it was like winning the lottery.
It's been 10 years since 32-year-old Norma Rodriguez was found in her home, strangled and wrapped in duct tape. The case has remained unsolved, with all leads turning out to be dead ends, until now. With advancements in DNA technology, evidence collected a decade ago has finally yielded results.
At the time of the autopsy of Norma Rodriguez, there were a number of samples that were taken. Hair samples, blood samples, and fingernail clippings.
The crime lab said we have a match on the DNA, and it comes back to Warren Mackey.
Warren, Norma's friend and former co-worker who had previously passed a polygraph and had an alibi for the night of the murder. At the time of the investigation, Warren had submitted his DNA and was cooperative.
Of everyone we dealt with, he was maybe the coolest customer of the bunch. It just blows you away.
Investigators start putting the pieces together about Warren Mackey.
If you're dealing with someone who's a true sociopath, they can get past the polygraph test. So now I'm thinking, all this time, were we dealing with a true sociopath and, couldn't see it?
We just went into high gear. We started unraveling everything again and doing what we needed to do.
Detectives start building a case based on forensics.
They evaluated DNA that we had gotten off of Norma's body, and we found Warren's DNA under Norma's fingernails.
The DNA evidence is a major breakthrough, but to build an airtight case, they want more.
The single biggest piece of physical evidence we had at the time was the duct tape. So it got sent off and it got tested.
The DNA that was obtained within the multiple layers of the duct tape was returned to Warren Mackey.
The odds of the DNA match being from someone else besides Warren Mackey was 1 in 810 billion. So we felt pretty confident that this was our person.
Investigators pieced together the events that led up to Norma's murder.
I think this was the classic case of a jilted suitor. And my guess is that he just got a flat-out rejection. He built up his expectations to a point where he couldn't take the fall.
Investigators believe in the early hours of May 31st, Warren Mackey entered Norma's home using keys he had stolen from her purse at the barbecue the day before.
According to Norma's son, Andrew, the house was dark. Many times she would fall asleep watching TV. Maybe she fell asleep on the couch. She had no idea what was about to happen.
Detectives believe that's when Warren strangled Norma.
In his mind, she needed to die because she shouldn't have rejected him.
Then Warren wrapped her head in duct tape.
Trying to depersonalize the scene and covered her face so that he wouldn't see it.
And he ripped that duct tape, handling both ends of the duct tape, wrapped it completely around her face, and left.
Police also believe Norma's 4-year-old son, Austin, was in the next room, not realizing his mother had been murdered.
Austin didn't process because he was a very small child. He was too young to process what had happened. An absolute nightmare.
After Warren kills Norma, he returns to his place in nearby Oxnard, as if nothing happened.
I believe that Warren Mackey was the type of person who felt that if I can't have her, nobody can. I think this was one sick individual who had no value for life. He had no right to do what he did.
On August 28, 2003, Ventura County investigators arrest Warren Mackey for the first-degree murder of Norma Rodriguez. Warren pleads not guilty.
During the subsequent 10 years, Warren had settled down. He had gotten married, had a job, was living a very stable life. His friends, neighbors said that he was a nice, caring man.
And for him to live 10 years after that and not even have any remorse, that is not human. I can't imagine what is in a person's head to even hurt another human in that way.
Then, on January 10, 2005, as investigators prepare for trial, the DA receives an unexpected call. Warren Mackey has changed his plea to guilty.
Warren Mackey is an unexpected killer because people didn't see that inner demon, that selfishness, that narcissistic quality that would cause him to end someone else's life. People just didn't see him that way, but he was that way, and he is that way.
On March 28, 2005, Warren Mackey is sentenced to 15 years to life for the murder of Norma Rodriguez.
Oh, it was phenomenal. It was such an elation. You felt like this weight being lifted.
At the end of the day, we achieved closure for the family, but there's never going to be complete closure.
The devastating loss of the vibrant single mother will forever be felt by her loved ones.
I think about Norma a lot. She was having a good life, and he took it away from her.
It still hurts like it happened yesterday. I miss her in my life. That wound does not heal. We just put it in the back burner. We have to live for Norma, and we have to go forward.
It was a baffling case.
Baffling.
To have missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
A huge
Unusual.
deal. Very, very unusual.
Elizabeth was very naive. She would trust anybody and everybody. She was like, why haven't I heard from her and I can't find her?
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help.
You told her, let him go. Tell him to leave. You've got help coming.
Yeah. And
she wouldn't. But now, a phone call that would change everything. A third woman taken.
There was a female and that she had been held captive.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
Oh, come on. Just put the phone down.
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
No.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window.
And then the line goes silent.
Yep.
What is the address to your emergency? 4th Street, Laundromat. Problem. I've been exhausted.
It's 6:48 a.m. in September 2016. Emergency dispatchers receive a 911 call from a terrified woman. She's whispering that she's being held at a house near the laundromat and that her captor is asleep at her side.
Is he in the same room with you? Yes. Does he have a weapon? He's got a taser. Is there any way you can get out of the building?
I don't know, without waking him, and I'm scared. His bedroom is closed, and he made it so it would make noise.
And we have officers we're sending.
Officer Kurt Dorsey rushes to the scene, leaving his siren off so that it does not alert the abductor. So, what were you doing when the call came in?
We responded from the police station. We were trying to be stealthy. We were told that the suspect was sleeping, so we wanted to approach and not make a bunch of noise.
You weren't even sure the call was real, right?
I didn't believe it was real at first, just because of the town that we live in. Just not a typical call that we would get in Ashland.
Ashland, Ohio. It's a small city between Columbus and Cleveland, home to more than 50 churches and a large Amish community.
Ashland is a quiet, rural community. There's about 20,000 people who live there. It has a university, a lot of farm field.
So this is Ashland. What can you tell me about the town?
Well, as you can see, it's rolling hills, scenic. A lot of community stuff going on. Football games. The county fair. A lot of farm animals, a lot of competitions and shows for kids to get involved with.
Typical small town where everyone knows everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kim Major has had 23 years of service as a detective in Ashland.
I handled violent crime and I handled sex offenses and child abuse. I'm over 1,000 of those cases.
1,000?
Yeah.
At the time of that terrifying 911 call, the community is already on edge. Just a week before, police discovered that a woman in town had simply vanished. Well, there was a missing person named Elizabeth Griffith.
Yes. Elizabeth was known in our town. I had had contact with her. I think we all had. A lot of the officers would have an eye on her.
She was kind of a vulnerable person, and we helped her quite a bit as a police division.
She used to call them quite frequently. She would call them about anything and everything. Just like, I heard it's going to snow today. Is there any chance that the roads will be closed? She was definitely a character.
Facing mental health challenges, 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith attended meetings at a peer support center called LifeWorks.
Elizabeth was very bubbly and energetic. The first time I met Elizabeth was at LifeWorks, and she was coming down the hallway and I was coming opposite of her. And she was like, "Hey, you're new here." And I was like, "Yeah?" And she was like, "You want to be my friend?" And I was like, "Sure, let's be friends."
She was embraced not just by LifeWorks, but also by her church family.
Elizabeth was a really sweet girl, a simple person. She liked to make people laugh. She liked to sing. She loved to worship. She would raise her hand the highest during worship. Even though she was tone deaf, she'd sing louder than anyone else. She was very much with the heart of a child. It was a little harder for her to grasp some things sometimes.
She was a very loving person and a very loyal person. Certainly financial challenges, certainly medical challenges, mental health challenges.
She lived on her own in her own apartment. She did have a case manager that kind of helped her with daily life struggles. She was always introducing herself to everybody, very outgoing.
The community knew Elizabeth, and she was one of ours, and she was taken care of.
But then Elizabeth's support team realizes no one has seen her in weeks.
We were at LifeWorks and the phone rang, and it was Elizabeth's case manager. And she had asked if we had seen Elizabeth lately. She was like, I can't find her. So I called her cell phone and it just went straight to voicemail, which was highly unlikely for Elizabeth. I was like, something's not right.
I was concerned because where would she have gone? What could have happened?
She wasn't the type of person that would go missing, so we sort of knew something was wrong there.
This is an area where I would often see Elizabeth Griffith walking, and just days before her disappearance, I stopped and chatted with her right up here.
It was a baffling case.
It was baffling. We didn't know if she had taken off or did she meet somebody online and leave. We didn't know if it was suicide. We didn't know where she was.
Everybody was taking to social media, posting pictures of her. Everyone was looking for her. Everybody was praying for her.
Police began to investigate, speaking to Elizabeth's neighbors and friends and tracing her last known steps.
I began talking with some of the public transit drivers because she would often use public transportation.
Before she disappeared, records showed that Elizabeth had taken the bus to go shopping.
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
There's video of her going through the aisles and then waiting for the bus.
She disappeared shortly thereafter, and she wouldn't be the only one. It turns out there's another missing woman in Ashland.
I said, all right, Mom, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And that was the last we ever heard.
In Ohio are searching for missing woman Elizabeth Griffith, and then they discover there's a second woman in town who also has mysteriously disappeared. 43-year-old Stacy Stanley, a divorced mom, devoted to her sons, Curtis and Corey.
One of my mom's favorite songs was Leonard Skinner's Freebird. It's a pretty good song.
Corey likes simple pleasures, playing music, riding his motorcycle on the highways of Ohio, raising his baby daughter. For him, family is everything, and his bond with his mother, Stacy, has always been particularly tight.
Good boy, you kicked your brother.
How would you describe her?
Very loving and caring, to do anything for anybody, you know, give the shirt off her back if she needed to.
Always there for her kids, calling you consistently. You know, if she didn't pick up, she'd call you like 1,000 times.
My sister was a very outgoing person.
It's a perfect time to make this wish. Have a happy birthday. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Stanley. $9.
Growing up, we were so close in age and we shared the same room and stuff growing up.
Karaoke?
She would sing some songs.
Now and then when I see your
She loved punk rock music and the look, too.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. I actually had a video of her singing it when we were kids. I was videotaping her singing that.
So she was not afraid to get on stage and perform?
No.
Even as adults, you were pretty close.
Yeah, I'd come home from work and she'd have big bunches of food made up, and I was like, oh, wow.
I hear she was a great cook.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get look like this over nothing, you know.
She fed you well, huh?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And Stacy was a new grandmother to Curtis's 3-year-old daughter.
She was a great grandmother. She was spoiled the hell out of her for sure.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
Stacy lived in Greenwich, Ohio, 30 minutes from Ashland.
Stacy was not from our county. She was from a county that butts up to our county, and she had visited Ashland.
It was September 8th, 2016, when she takes a fateful drive to Ashland to run some errands.
She went to Walmart to get some gardening supplies because she loved doing her gardening. And she also went to get her nails done. And then after that, she was getting some gas and to come back home.
It's around 8:30 at night when Stacy calls her son Corey from this gas station. She's stranded here with a flat tire and needs help.
She was like freaking out, and I said, well, just calm down, we'll find somebody to help you.
Were you worried?
Oh, not necessarily out the rip.
It's just a flat tire, you're thinking?
Just a flat tire, yeah.
They're able to find a family friend to meet Stacy at the gas station, but it turns out a stranger has also shown up to help.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help. I had then told her to tell him, kick rocks. We got somebody to come and help you. And
she wouldn't?
Well, she's like, oh, he's a nice guy, he just stopped to help. And so my mom, the person she was friendly and talked to people. This guy takes over and he changes the tire. She offers him a ride home. And I said, all right, Mom. I said, call me in the morning. She's like, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, all right, love you too, Mom.
But the next day, Corey and Curtis don't receive the usual flurry of calls from their mom.
And then I talked to my aunt, and I'm like, hey, Mom's not picking up. I don't know what's going on. We ended up breaking into her house to get in, and she had 2 little dogs. She loved them little dogs, little chihuahuas.
Her dogs were still in their kennel, so we knew something was going on.
The Huron County Sheriffs had put out a bolo, be on the lookout for her vehicle.
We went driving the roads
looking for her.
In case she might have had an accident, was down in a ravine or a ditch or anything. We went looking, driving the routes from Ashland back to Greenwich.
Within hours, Stacy's family spreads out across the streets of Ashland, trying to find any trace of her.
We went down to the gas station, the BP, where she was last seen.
I had printed off like almost 2,000 or 3,000 flyers. We were just passing them out and putting them up everywhere. There's probably a good 70 of us, at least, out there handing flyers out.
Detective Brian Evans is on patrol in Ashland when he spots the family.
As I was driving around the city of Ashland, I met up with different groups of her family who was actively searching for Stacy at the time. They were in different groups knocking on doors. They were going down to some abandoned buildings.
Well, I came across the radio that somebody had reported her car on East 9th Street in Ashland. We beat the cops over to the car.
And I opened the door, and I looked, I was like, the seat was all the way back. So my mom was short, so it didn't make sense why the seat was back.
I had grabbed her cigarette container she put her cigarette butts in, and I happened to see a Camel filtered cigarettes in there. And I was like, these aren't my mom's. My mom don't smoke these. At this point, it's alarming because somebody else was in this car.
So now it's not just Elizabeth Griffith who is missing in Ashland.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacy is gone. The odds of 2 women missing at the same time just did not make sense whatsoever.
To have 2 missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
It's a huge
unusual
deal. Very, very unusual for a county this size to have anyone missing, much less 2 women missing.
The community had concern. The word was starting to spread around.
We were like, what's really going on? It's Ashland. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen in Ashland.
Then, a heart-stopping clue in a window at the back of the house. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
Oh.
7-11-22 I'm a 911 dispatcher, Ashland Police Department. I've been a dispatcher for 26 years.
What is your typical day like?
Go to work, sign into all the computers. We usually have 6 to 8 screens, depending on what center you're at. Answer calls. You never know when the call will come in or what kind of call it's going to be.
Your most memorable call?
Probably this one.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
September 13th, 2016. 6:48 a.m.
Yep, the end of my shift.
By September 13, 2016, Elizabeth Griffith had not been seen for a month. Stacy Stanley for 5 days. You're working the dispatch and you get that call.
At first I couldn't hear her. It was real quiet. She was whispering.
What's the problem? I've been abducted.
She says, I've been abducted.
Yes.
Your reaction?
My reaction was to find out where she was at first, to get her out of there.
20 West 81st Street.
The dispatcher had told us that there was a female and that she had been held captive somewhere near a laundromat. So we immediately start to drive towards the area of the call.
Where's she at now?
Asleep.
Where's she sleeping at?
In the bedroom.
I asked her more questions, trying to get as much as I could before he woke up.
You have to be calm, but there's an urgency.
Yes.
The woman says she's calling from her abductor's phone.
He had fallen asleep at some point, and she was able to secure this phone.
You couldn't trace the call back then?
Couldn't trace the call. This was a flip phone. It was not coming back to a location.
Do you need an ambulance? Are you bleeding from anywhere?
Not anymore.
Where were you bleeding from? You don't have to talk if you don't need to, okay?
Why couldn't she get out on her own?
Well, he had taken the doorknobs off, apparently.
As Officer Dorsey heads to the scene, there's a problem. How to find her?
The caller does not know her exact address, but she tells 911 she's being held captive in a house next to this laundromat. The problem for police is that there are two very similar houses in this area. There were two houses right here?
Yes. Two identical houses.
And you didn't know which one?
No, they were nearly identical, both the same color, same shape, two-story. We had no idea which one.
They can't just gang bust into a house. What if he'd have woke up with a weapon and hurt her? So they had to find her quietly. So they were outside looking for her.
So how do you approach the house knowing that the captor is asleep?
So we first started to just look in windows to see if we could see anything. Just check different doors to see if we can pinpoint which house she's in.
As police conduct the search, there's a heart-stopping moment when the caller says she has awakened her abductor.
Oh, come on. Just set the phone down.
You can hear the sheer terror in her voice when he wakes up.
Yep.
And then the line goes silent. It must have seemed like
Yes,
that.
forever.
What's going through your mind?
I'm just praying they find her.
Five agonizing minutes later, she's back.
Yep.
Are you still there? Do you hear any officers outside? Okay, they're in the area.
What was it like to hear her voice again?
It was good. Glad she was still there and not hurt. And he was still sleeping. So that's good.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
It's chilling.
I remember as I was checking the doors, panic starts to set in. I wanted to find her so bad. We're going back and forth between the two houses. The dispatcher had told us at some point that she heard a door.
Okay, I can hear him. Do you hear him?
I remembered that I had pulled on a door hard and it made a noise that I didn't intend. So I ran around the house that we were currently at and looked towards the direction of the other house.
And they tell them to come back.
She said,
Hurry, hurry.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window, and I knew at that point she was in there. I would have gone through the wall to get to her.
A hand right on the window. That's pretty eerie. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
We went to the door, it was locked, and I asked the dispatcher to relay to her that she needed to unlock the door.
Can you unlock the door at all?
She's able to unlock it, and we're able to open it.
Where is he? I'm sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
It took 19 long minutes to get her out. What was it like when you finally hear Detective Dorsey?
It's the best sound ever. I was glad because the officers were safe. She was safe.
You smiled a little because you're proud of her?
Yeah, proud of her.
What a relief.
What was it like when you came face to face with the victim?
I'll never forget the way that she looked at us. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. She was fully nude. I don't think I've ever felt so much relief to find her. Divine intervention and a good dispatcher led us to that house and ultimately that door.
So now, police need to find out what happened in this house.
Where is he? I'm sleeping. Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
With the terrified 911 caller safely in their custody, police turned their attention to her abductor, a 40-year-old man identified as Sean Great. The dramatic moment when he's apprehended is heard on that open line from the 911 call.
Once we got Mr. Great into custody, he was handcuffed. He ended up in my car. So I began interviewing Mr. Great.
And how do you know her again?
We spend a lot of time lately together. We go eat lunch every day.
The victim, a 36-year-old woman, police identify as Jane Doe to protect her privacy. It's transported to the Ashland Police Department. Police are desperate for information. No easy task, as the woman was traumatized and still in shock. But Ashland Police have a secret weapon. Enter Detective Kim Major.
Kim is the best interviewer that I've ever seen. She's able to speak with anyone, whether that be small kids or a violent criminal.
I was the only female detective for the majority of my career. Is that good? Is that good?
Major balanced the demands of detective work with the responsibilities of being a mother to 3. That morning, Detective Kim Major is in the shower getting ready for work, and she misses 2 phone calls from her captain at the Ashland Police Department.
And I called him back, and he said, well, he gruffed at me and said 2 calls and a text. And he said, there's been a kidnapping. We've rescued the woman, and I need you to come in and interview her.
You come to the station, and what happens?
The victim was taken into my office at the end of this hallway, and that's where I spoke with her.
She had been tortured emotionally and physically.
Yes, she had. So I bring her into my office.
The effects of the woman's harrowing ordeal were immediately apparent.
The first thing I noticed is her appearance, of course. I could see that she had been victimized. The second thing I noticed was that I could smell the scent of her perpetrator. It's testosterone.
You could smell him.
I could.
What did you learn about Jane?
I learned that she had met Sean Great. She eats her noon meal at what we call the Croc Center. They provide free meals at noon. Jane Doe would eat there sometimes, and that's where she met Sean Great.
He was tall like my brother, my older brother, and he's kind of goofy, but he struck me as kind. When I would run into him at lunch, and if neither one of us was doing anything, we'd just walk around Ashland.
This is a woman so strong in her Christian faith that no man's phone number is in her phone, not one. No man crosses the threshold of her door.
He let me know that he would be interested in more, but I told him that I wasn't interested in, in beyond friends.
Kim was speaking with Jane Doe, and our captain at the time, Captain Lay, was speaking with Sean Great in the interview room.
David Lay, you are Sean. Sean. Great.
At the same time, Jane Doe and Sean Great were being interviewed at the station. Detective Brian Evans was part of a team sent back to search the house where Jane had been held captive.
We went upstairs. The mattress in the bedroom looked like a dirty, used mattress that was just found somewhere and used as a mattress. And then there were some restraints, as in tied clothing, tied to different areas of the mattress to where it looked like that's where Jane Doe was possibly tied up.
So just how did Jane Doe end up a prisoner in this house of horrors? The pair had been out for one of their regular walks and ended up at the house where Sean Great had been staying.
He told her that he had some clothes for her. She also had bagged up some food for him. And she said it was against her better judgment to walk through the door because it's unlike her. But she did.
He just started showing me the clothes, and I remember him asking if I had an extra Bible because he didn't have one, so I got him one.
So she sat down to read the Bible, and as she's reading, he began to pace. And then he charged towards her, grabbed the Bible from her hands, ripped it from her hands.
Jane Doe tells Detective Major that at that point, Sean Great attacked her.
I tried to push him away and get up. I was just doing everything, trying to kick, punch, but everything I did, he just did it so much harder.
And then what did he do to her?
Sexually assaulted her. Her words were every way imaginable.
He would always bind my wrists, my legs, at times.
The details were horrifying, but the interview takes a sudden turn when Jane Doe mentions the name of Elizabeth Griffith, one of two missing women police had been searching for.
She lived in the building next to me. Sweet, but like a child. Sean and I were playing badminton in the front yard, and Elizabeth saw us and came out. I think she just started, talking with us, and I don't know if I introduced her or she introduced herself.
Police discover there's a vital link between Jane Doe, Sean Great, and Elizabeth Griffith. All three of them would frequent this community center where they'd get free meals. That connection sets off alarm bells.
Was it possible that this man, unknown to law enforcement in Ashland, Sean Great, was also involved in the disappearance of Elizabeth Griffith?
When I stepped out of my office, my captain said, "Listen, I need you to go in and talk to him about what Jane Doe told you. Can you go in and see if you can nail down the facts regarding that, see if it parallels what he's saying happened?" "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you." The last thing he said before I walked in was, "And while you're in there, see if he knows anything about the missing girls."
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
What do you do?
Well, I walked down this hallway. I was told to go ahead and interview him, and this is where the interview room is. And when I came in, he was seated right here.
Oh, he was right here.
Yeah. "Hey, Sean, I'm Kim Major. Nice to meet you."
Before you came in here, did you have any idea what you were in for?
No, I had no idea.
You had your own recorder?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I took the recorder and just dropped it down my top.
Because you wanted a record of this?
Yes, just a backup in case something happened, and in this case, it proved valuable.
Valuable indeed, because the video system stopped recording shortly after Detective Major began interviewing Great. That means her backup was the only recording of the interview while the system was down.
So we're going to get these cuffs off you.
You decided to take off his handcuffs.
Yeah.
Why?
I need to drop all of those things that would inhibit somebody's ability to relax or feel comfortable.
But out of his handcuffs, he could attack you.
He could.
You weren't thinking about that?
At that time, no.
In a city where law enforcement routinely interacts with the community, Sean Great was not known to police.
I had never heard his name. I had never had any tips about him. We didn't know him.
Sean Great had grown up in Marion, Ohio. That's about an hour from Ashland.
He was a good-looking kid, charming.
With Sean Great, people talk about his eyes, they're piercing blue eyes. And women will talk about that. That's how they recall him, or his eyes.
He just had one of these very likable personalities, very soft, laid back, very unassuming type of personality. And it was just one of those things that you just almost couldn't hardly not like.
Sean never told me much at all about his background. I knew he had either a sister and a brother. I had never met his dad. He told me his mom abandoned him. He absolutely hated his mother.
Christina Hildreth dated Sean Great for 5 years.
I think before we moved in together, he had worked at, it was a motel, Super 8 or something in Marion, and he might have worked there a couple of weeks. That was about it. Other than that, I've never known him to have a job.
While unknown to police in Ashland, Sean Great had become a familiar face at the Croc Center.
He would just come to our hot meal and just kind of integrated himself into the community meal and the community that attended and started making friends. I'd see him around town, walking and talking with people, and he just really kind of absorbed what we had.
What did he say about Jane?
At first, he tried to present it as if she wanted him, like they were in a relationship, that she wanted the sexual piece of this.
That was one of the reasons why she said she wanted to marry me, because she was horny that day.
Eventually, as we peel that away, you realize she didn't want this.
Just as empathy had helped in speaking to Jane Doe, Major was using a similar approach, hoping to gain Great's trust. And slowly, he begins to open up, sharing details about his childhood.
May have started when my mom left me when I was a child. I come home from school and she's gone, but I don't blame her. I used to, but...
Why did she leave?
She had to go find herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Does he admit that something happened with Jane Doe?
Eventually, he begins to talk about what happened and admits in layers. He admits that he had held her there captive, admits that he had tied her up. I mean, looking at this whole thing, you forced her to have sex. She didn't want to.
I abducted her and I raped her.
And there it was. Detective Major had the confession, but the confession itself only raised more questions.
As he spoke about what he did to Jane Doe and would use the words kill, that he strangled her, you begin to realize this may be way more than Jane Doe. And earlier in my career, I probably would have stopped right at Jane Doe. Now, I realize it's a partial confession.
Detective Major brings the conversation back to Elizabeth Griffith, that missing woman who Jane Doe said also knew Sean Great.
We can't find Elizabeth. We'll find her, but we can't right now. Hey, look at me. Look at me. I need your help. That goes on for just so long enough that he's acting like he has no idea what I'm talking about.
And then suddenly, Sean Great makes a shocking revelation.
I might not be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
See many.
Now, detectives knew Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy Stanley were missing, but now Sean Great seems to be talking about even more women.
I guess I'm ready to try and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you first.
Then things take a bizarre and frightening turn.
I'm thinking, this is not good.
At what point do you realize I might be dealing with a serial killer? You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
The magnitude was becoming clearer to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Are there any other girls in the house right now?
He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night.
He says, "Meet the other me." I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
You don't normally have a killer show you how he did it.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned. I'd get up behind him like this. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, and he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
At one point, he told me it was probably a good thing I had him in custody, because there would be more.
We knew that she was relatively young. She had perfect teeth. We had somebody that had confessed to her murder.
A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Gray, that he wants to kill you?
No, that desire. I'm feeling it now.
Sean Great has confessed to his assault on Jane Doe. But what about those two missing women in Ashland? It's an urgent race to find out. Is he behind their disappearance? And can they be saved?
And as you continue interrogating Sean Great, time is of the essence.
Time is always of the essence. I feel like I'm against the clock to get him to say something before I say the wrong thing and cause them to stop talking at all.
And you're thinking he might have these two missing women and they could still be alive.
Absolutely. I start pressing him on where Elizabeth Griffith is.
Can you take me to where she is?
I can't.
Why? Sean, look at me. If I take you in my little detective truck, can you take me out?
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
I'm looking for Elizabeth's body. Can you take me to it?
So she's dead?
Then suddenly Sean Great reveals shocking information that maybe he can bring Detective Major to somebody else.
I might not be able to take you to her. Maybe someone else.
How many are there?
Not much you say many.
What?
I don't know. There might not be none.
He says he might not be able to take me to her, meaning Elizabeth, but might take me to someone else, and that there might be so many or there might be none.
So he's playing with you.
Possibly he's wanting to tell me something.
Will you take me there?
I think it's a place in Mansfield.
Where she is? Where are you going to take me in Mansfield? Where there's another girl?
Where there is a girl. That he met.
What happened? She's gone?
She's been gone.
Is she in a house? What is she in?
What?
All right, what's her name?
Candace.
Candace?
Cunningham.
Cunningham?
He tells you there's someone else and that woman is Candace Cunningham.
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
I did not know Candace. Candace hadn't been reported missing.
As her colleagues watching in the other room start looking for information on Candace Cunningham, Detective Major continues to question Sean for more information. After all, the two missing women in Ashland are still unaccounted for.
As I watched the interview, I could see that Sean was warming up to Kim. He was telling her more. Her methods were working.
What was it about you that he connected with, felt comfortable with?
He told me that I had empathy, that he could see it. Who else?
The house where I came from.
Yeah. Was somebody in there?
Yeah.
Who is it? Is it Elizabeth? Where is she in there?
So then Sean admits to you that Elizabeth's body is in the closet in that same house where he was holding Jane Doe.
Right in the same house. When he said that, I didn't know if she was alive or not.
As Kim's interviewing, I called Detective Brian Evans to tell him that Elizabeth was upstairs in a closet. He had been working on a search warrant at the house.
I was surprised by the information because officers had cleared the house. We headed upstairs to see if we could locate Elizabeth. This is an abandoned house that has old wooden steps. You could see bare footprints going upstairs.
One of the guys on scene said, there is no closet upstairs. That detective went directly to a particular room and looked up and realized there was a concealed closet.
There was a bunch of clothing just all over this closet.
There were stuffed animals piled down below.
As we started pulling away the clothes, you could see the fly activity, and there was an electrical tape that was taped up around the sides of the door to help from the smell to come from the door. And once the doors opened, there was another large pile of clothing. You could see the fly activity again all over the clothing.
Elizabeth's body was underneath all this.
Yes, it was.
What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that it was a tragedy, and once the clothes were removed, her body, she was actually kind of face down and hog-tied back.
Chilling.
Yes, it was very sad.
Sean tells Detective Major that the night of Elizabeth's murder all began when he says she called him late at night because she couldn't sleep.
She came over about 11 o'clock when she brought over Yahtzee, late Yahtzee. It just happened that the truck just reached up, just choked her.
We just didn't think it was possible. It couldn't have been Elizabeth. It just couldn't have been. And then we found out it was.
And we just sobbed and sobbed because it had come to a conclusion that we were not going to see our friend again.
You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
Yes. As it progressed, the magnitude was becoming clearer to me.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you everything first.
He's bought into me, he's going to talk to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Rape of Jane Doe, the murder of Elizabeth Griffith, and knowledge of the disappearance of Candace Cunningham. But Stacy Stanley is still missing, and Detective Major has a hunch he knows more about her as well.
As the hours tick by in this very same room,
Yes,
you got more and more out of him.
that's right. It just kept coming out in layers, a little bit more and a little bit more. Are there any other girls in the house right now? Yeah?
One down in the basement.
Down in the basement? What's her name?
Stacy.
He tells me that Stacy Stanley was in the basement of the home under a pile of trash.
Now remember, Stacy was that missing woman whose family had been searching for her after she was seen with a stranger changing her tire at that BP gas station. Sean says he was that stranger, and he tells Detective Major his version of what happened that night.
She came home with me. We kind of hit it off pretty good. And then we didn't. Went sour fast. I just snapped on her.
The mood at the police division was shock. It was just chaotic and pretty unreal.
Then you get another disturbing call. There's another body in the basement.
Yes, if you go down the basement, there's space behind the stairwell. There was multiple bags of trash stacked up, and underneath the trash is where Stacy was. There was actually a picture of just her hand kind of sticking out of the trash, like eerily saying, like, I'm here.
Have you ever seen anything like this in all your years of police work?
No, I've been on other homicides and other tragic cases, but not to this magnitude, no. A lot of our local community was coming to the area, and you could tell the feeling in the air was that the people knew that we found bodies in that house.
What started as a rescue ended with a gruesome discovery that only got worse. Now, families wait to find out if those women are their loved ones.
I got a phone call saying I need to get to Ashland ASAP. I don't want it to be my mom. I mean, nobody wants it to be their mom. I don't get to watch her grow old. My daughter she don't get to watch my daughter grow up.
Honestly, I think that my sister's in that house and they're not going to know anything for a couple hours.
They pulled out a couple pictures. They're like, do you guys recognize that? I said, yeah, that's my mom's picture.
It was very traumatic, you know, having to see that, and that was my mom laying there, you know.
It's bad enough what he did, but for some reason, thinking that he put her under trash. It makes it worse.
It still touches you.
It does. For me, the day that cases don't impact me would be the day that I need to pack it in.
You want it to touch you. Do you want to feel
I want it to touch me. I mean, I don't want to be in an interview and lose control, but these ladies mattered.
But Detective Major had to put aside her emotions. Sean Great had confessed to a third woman named Candace Cunningham.
Candace was a little, tiny, vibrant woman, lived in the next county over, Richland County. Candace had not been reported missing, and Candace had dated Sean Great.
On her Facebook page, Candace posts about Sean Great, including this picture, and later writing, I am back with Sean and love him. It was just 1 month before her murder. In the interrogation room, Sean describes strangling her in an abandoned house after an alleged altercation.
3 o'clock in the morning, I got hit in the face with a bag of tobacco. I just snapped.
After I was done interviewing him, which went all day, I had asked him if he would take me to where Candace's body was.
What's going through your mind?
I was hoping that he wouldn't shut down from just having the emotions of going back to that place. So this is the scene where the home was, where Candace Cunningham was living with Sean Great. So there was a home here. He burned it down after he murdered her in the home.
Investigators took video of Sean that day as he led them to where he left Candace's body.
He's agreed to come out and show us where he put the body.
He killed her in a house that was here and then dragged her body toward the ravine?
Prior to burning that down, he carried her body wrapped up in a blanket. He carried her to the ravine.
Yeah, I remember these rocks.
How far down?
carried her across the creek and up, straight up the hill about between 10 and 15 feet, just a big shrub.
While you were here, Sean got emotional.
He did. When we rolled up, I actually had to ask him, "Are you okay? You okay?" And he said it was hard. It was hard.
What was it like to finally find this woman and give it some closure?
Like I wanted to go down to the ravine and rescue her, but she's gone. Frustrating that she hadn't been reported missing, that no one even knew at all.
As the investigation continues, Sean performs another show and tell.
I just lost it. And then I just turned her around.
Revealing more deadly secrets. During the interrogation, you asked Sean to show you his strangulation technique.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grinned.
Woman being held captive. Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Sean Michael Great is being held for kidnapping tonight, and the sheriff's department says he should be charged with murder.
Lord, I told that undertaker, undertaker, please drive slow.
The community response was one of just complete shock. People had no idea that something like this could happen here.
Even though I don't know them, we are thinking about them and praying for them.
All I kept saying was, "Oh my God." And it was just like, this is unreal. No, we're not talking about the same guy.
I was just like, how? I knew he had this anger, but when I first found out, I couldn't comprehend that this was something he had actually done.
Those closest to Great were surprised to learn of his killing spree, despite them having their own chilling experiences with him. His former girlfriend, Christina Hildreth, says Great once spied on her from inside her sofa.
He says, "I've been living in the couch." He said, "When you came in, you were sitting on me. I seen everything you did." He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night. That was terrifying.
And his friend Tim Dennis claims he had a text exchange with Sean that made his blood run cold.
He had, just out of the clear blue, asked me if he could borrow $20. And I told him no. All of a sudden, here's this whole slew of scathing messages. And he told me, "Bed bugs are coming to your house, roaches are coming." And then he makes this statement. He says, "Meet the other me." Honestly, I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
2 days after his arrest, you go interview him again now with Detective Evans?
Yes, I did. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to get off his chest.
Anything else you thought about that you haven't talked about? What's that?
It's a cold case. They've already found her.
I'm thinking her name was Dana. I told her to forget her name.
He tells me that he had killed a woman in Marion County.
10 years earlier.
10 years earlier.
Dana.
He didn't know her name for sure.
Who was she?
She had come to his mother's house to sell magazines.
Sean says he got upset because the woman didn't deliver the magazines that Sean's mother had ordered.
He said he was in town and just happened to see her. So he said he made up a story that he had money back at his house.
So that's when I fronted her. So you're gonna rip me off like you did my mom? Dad. That's when I choked her out right here.
He said he placed her out by some railroad tracks. Her body had been found years and years ago. She just hadn't been identified.
Detective Major knows authorities will need to figure out who this Dana is, but they press on, probing Sean about key details of his other murders.
Detective Evans and I decided we might try to have him show us how he strangled the victims. So Brian Evans says, would you do this on a doll?
And what did he say?
He said, I'll just do it on you, and kind of grinned. I was like, okay, and then we got up.
So I roll the camera.
Okay, this is Detective Major. We have Detective Evans in the room, Sean Great in the room.
Then he kind of just gets behind Brian and does a hold on him.
Brad just grab her.
I look at Brian's eyes and I'm thinking, this is not good.
So I'm you, and you're Sean. So what did he do?
So he just came up behind. He said, I'd get up behind him like this, and then he comes back. He locks this in, he locks this arm in, he locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow, wow.
And at that point, I kind of mouthed over to Detective Major that I'm not doing that again.
You could have lost consciousness in seconds. He could have killed you.
I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It just went to getting the evidence, and I feel I have some training that I don't believe he would have killed me.
Police don't normally get this kind of demonstrative evidence. You don't normally have a killer not only confess to a crime, but then actually show you how he did it.
How'd you know to stop? She went like this.
This morning, suspect Sean Great held on a $1 million bond and facing double murder and kidnapping charges.
Do you understand the nature of the 3 offenses charged in the complaint, Mr. Great?
Yes, Your Honor.
He seemed kind of unalarming. I could understand why maybe women were trusting of him or went with him willingly, because he didn't look like a monster.
Law enforcement is on the hunt to figure out just who is this unidentified woman Sean Great has confessed to killing 10 years prior in neighboring Marion County.
Nobody knew who she was. It was a great mystery.
Investigators reached out to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
My name is Samantha Molnar. My position at Ohio BCI is a forensic artist. I can do a clay facial reconstruction from the skeletal remains. We can actually 3D print an exact replica of the skull. I basically start doing the clay reconstruction from there, building the muscle structure on the face, placing the average tissue depth markers, and then kind of finishing the sculpture. We did receive some tips, but none of those tips led to an identity.
Detective Kim Major isn't just trying to crack the Sean Great case. She also has to juggle the full-time job of being a mom to 3 active kids.
All right, hook her up.
I'm always worried about her, no matter where she is. I would stay up at night, me and my little brother would, and just wait till she gets home.
I try to say that I am not overprotective of my kids, but I'm sure I am.
But could this case put Kim or her family in grave danger?
When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. On Friday night, my husband coaches football. I actually took my younger kids to the football game, and I sat there, which was also surreal, seeing all the things around me and the lights.
People are happy.
They're happy, they're cracking the helmets. The band, watching my husband, hearing the whistles.
Friday Night Lights.
It's Friday Night Lights. That's small town America. I brought my kids home, put them to bed.
That's when Detective Major's oldest son, Corbin, who's preparing to enter the police academy, comes into the room.
He's like, what's going on, Mom? I said, Sean Great builds forts all over the place. He's like MacGyver. He stays in these things. But there's one in particular he keeps talking about.
He had a fort in the woods, and she explained to me where it was. And I remember there was a body recovery within quarter to a half mile that deemed a drug overdose right on a gas line.
I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, there was a woman that died of an overdose, and they dumped her body there.
We also just learned a body was found in Ashland County. Police say a gas company worker found the body behind a tree on County Road 1908, just south of Route 30.
And he said, hold on a second.
I kind of marked out where she thought his fort exactly was and kind of marked the distance. It was on the same county road. I was like, there's no way this is just a coincidence. This has to be from him. It's just, there's no way it's not.
I said, honey, it's an overdose and a dumping. And he said, that's because of her lifestyle. And people assume it's that. He said he did it. You have to go talk to him. You have to do something. The next morning, went in to the jail, pulled Sean Great out. There's a case from out in the county, meaning that we found a girl. And we're trying to see if you'll be honest, if that's something you have something to do with.
Rebecca Lacey.
Yes, sir.
I had problems with her once.
31-year-old Rebecca Lacey's death had been ruled a drug overdose by the Ashland County coroner. But now, Sean Great shares what he says happened to her.
We played a game of pool. I went to the bathroom, right? I had some money in my wallet. And that's the first thing I did was just check my wallet. And it was gone.
He said she had stolen a few dollars from him. And he said he had strangled her. He talks about borrowing a car and taking her body out and dumping her in my county.
This is where Rebecca Lacey's body was found.
Yes, right against this tree right here.
When was she found here?
March of 2015, her body was found, and she had been here for a couple months.
Hard to believe that such a heinous crime could have happened here.
It should be a place of solitude, but instead, it's a place where a woman's body was discarded like she didn't matter.
But Rebecca Lacey's case was public knowledge, and Detective Major needed proof that Sean was actually involved in her death. So she asked him about details from the crime scene. What did Sean tell you about the placement of that memorial?
During the interview, when I had asked him to tell me some things that nobody would know, he said,
I can tell you the truth, because where I found the cross and stuff right now, she wasn't found there. She was found over by the tree.
He said you put the memorial in the wrong place.
Yes. He was right. Nobody would have known that.
With this new information, authorities reopened the Rebecca Lacey case, ruled her death a homicide, and later charged Sean Great with her murder. Detective Major had formed a unique bond with Sean Great. You spent 33 hours with Sean Great?
Yeah, 8 interviews, 33 hours over the course of over a month.
So much so that they've been compared to Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs.
Starling.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
What kind of toll does it take on you?
It may have made me a little more hypersensitive. When the case was going on, our affair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. And I said, who is this? And he won't answer me. And then he hangs up. They contact a guy who made the phone call. It was just a coincidence. The case probably changed how I handled something like that. That was a rough one for me that night.
A month after he's arrested, there's another chilling development. A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great is targeting you, that he wants to kill you.
He said that Sean Great told him he was trying to find my gun on my body, that he thought it would be the ultimate to kill me.
This information did not lead to any additional charges against Great, but future meetings between Detective Major and Sean Great took place at the jail, where no weapons are allowed.
All along, do you think he was plotting to kill you?
I didn't know that initially. I went into a later interview with him. I said, "Are you still having that hunger that you talk about?"
Can I ask you something? Will you be honest? Do you still have thoughts?
About that desire.
Yeah.
I'm afraid the desire probably grew when there wasn't no desire at first, but it might have gotten more. Now I feel like something that I had to do. I'm feeling it now.
He told you he still had that hunger to kill.
Yes.
Sean Great says he had a hunger to kill. But Jane Doe and the victims' families had a hunger for justice. And now in court, they come face to face with the man they say is
18, and Sean Great goes on trial at this courthouse for crimes against 3 of his victims: Jane Doe, Elizabeth Griffith, and Stacy Stanley.
It was the trial that everybody was waiting for. They wanted to know if this community, if these families were going to get justice.
This is not a whodunit case. This is a he did it case. The defendant subsequently, over the course of multiple interviews, confessed to every element of every crime with which he is charged.
I ask that you consider that Sean freely and voluntarily gave information during several interviews which implicated himself in several serious offenses.
Jane Doe comes face to face with her abductor, bravely taking the stand against Sean Great, detailing her horrifying ordeal.
It was probably the most crucial testimony in the case.
How was he choking?
With both hands around my neck.
Did he let go of your neck?
I think when I stopped struggling and fighting, he asked me if I had enough. And I think I just remained motionless, and so he released his hands.
She testified about the terror that she went through during the time that she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted.
At the trial, they played the audio of your interview.
They did.
With Sean.
Yes.
I entered the interview room to interview Sean Great.
You can hear my heart beating at key times during the interview.
Who was that you were talking to on the phone?
It made me realize that maybe it affects me physically more than I recognize.
Prosecutors reveal gruesome details about the deaths of 2 of his alleged victims.
People don't understand when you were in that trial, what you see and what you hear, you can't unsee or unhear ever, and those thoughts are always in your mind. You can't forget it.
It was too gruesome. It hurt you that much?
Yeah.
Even talking about it today? Why?
Just what she went through. It wasn't fair.
Sorry.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled, find the defendant, Sean M. Great, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Sean Great, guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder as well as rape and kidnapping. But justice is bittersweet.
He devastated so many people, he changed our lives, and he took away not only Elizabeth's innocence, but the innocence of all of us that believed we were safe.
The day of his sentencing, Sean Great addressed the court.
I ask you, maybe forgive me, find in your heart someday. I know not today, someday. This mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to listen, hear this. Okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys.
He asked us in court to forgive him, not for him, but for us. And obviously, I haven't forgave him. for what he did.
Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes, burn in hell.
The victim impact statements were extremely emotional and very powerful. We heard from Stacy Stanley's son and 2 of her brothers.
It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them, it affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young.
The offender was found guilty. Any sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Great.
At the trial, you had justice for Stacy Balloons.
Yeah.
And Stanley Strong. And you released him when he got the death penalty.
Yes, there was quite a few people that showed up out there to show the support for the family, and that we were glad that he got convicted and received the death penalty. I mean, that was what we were hoping for.
Praise God. In March 2019, Sean Great pleads guilty to the murders of Rebecca Lacey and Candace Cunningham in Richland County. But his first victim remained unidentified.
You are what you eat. So the different things you're exposed to in your environment all show up in your bones. We learned that she likely was from a southern state, somewhere between Texas and Florida.
Then finally, a match.
Now this woman, a victim of serial killer Sean Great, has a face and a...
In June of 2018, the community of Ashland, Ohio gathered at the site of Jane Doe's frantic 911 call.
Today, that house was finally demolished, bringing closure for residents and relatives of the victims.
Many people felt like they needed to be here today.
After we found out that Elizabeth was one of the people in the house, I would have nightmares about it. And I would see her in the window asking for help. I wanted them to tear it down so bad, and I was so happy the day that they did.
You were there when you saw the house on Covert Court destroyed, demolished.
I was.
What did that feel like?
It was a tangible piece that was destroyed, but the weight of the situation is still here.
2007, the remains of a female.
1 year later, another step forward, a new development in the search for the identity of Great's first known victim.
The preliminary results indicated that the victim was very likely Dana Nicole Lowry of Minden, Louisiana.
So genetic genealogy was able to provide us a family and a potential identity of this person. And what we did next was go down and swab the daughter of Dana. We were able to directly compare the DNA from the daughter to the DNA from the remains to be able to confirm that was Dana Lowry.
Sean Great pleaded guilty to Dana Lowry's murder. So now there are 6 known victims, and only one of them survived, Jane Doe. What would you say to that woman if you were able to talk to her today, to Jane
How
Doe?
brave she was. She saved so many people. If she hadn't been brave and did what she did, we wouldn't have caught him. Then how many more women would have suffered?
Kim Major has retired from the Ashland Police Department, and she now works as the Safety Services Director at Ashland University. And she's written a book about the Sean Great case.
I don't want to forget this case. I don't want anyone to forget it. These women could have been anyone.
You titled the book A Hunger to Kill.
Those are his words. He has a hunger to kill.
Do you think there are other victims out there?
I don't think this is a closed book situation. I think more information may come out.
We never get to say our goodbyes.
As for the Stanley family, they're still dealing with the tremendous pain of losing Stacy. You miss her still?
Oh yeah. It's been 8 years. I haven't even opened a box of anything of hers. I just kind of put it behind like it doesn't exist to an extent.
What keeps you going?
I know she would want us to go on. And the boys. It just breaks my heart to see what they go through every day.
You ready, girlfriend?
And, you know, like, he just had a new baby.
Grandma? You see Grandma?
And he took her out and set her on his mom's bench at the cemetery.
Hello there. Grandma?
I talked myself into going out there.
Oh, that was so cute.
She was smiling so big.
It's beautiful.
And that's hard for me to sit and see my daughter never gonna be my mom.
Oh.
She was a great grandmother to her first granddaughter, and I'm sure she would have loved mine just as much. My mom did not deserve that. Any of the women didn't deserve that.
She was a very popular student.
She'd more or less completed that morning her final A-level exam.
She had just vanished.
It was a huge shock for everyone around him.
It's not something you expect in your village, is it? You know, it just doesn't happen.
I remember being woken up by the police helicopters.
The police helicopter picked up a person running away.
You cannot expect what had happened to her had actually happened.
This was every young parent's nightmare. The anguish of where is she, what's happened to her.
Police!
On the outskirts of Wigan lies the quiet and peaceful village of Orrell.
Orrell is a really nice place to live. It's pretty quiet. We've got everything we need on our doorstep.
We have loads of local shops. We have butchers, newsagents, coffee shops, craft shops. So we are very lucky around here. It's a lovely place to live.
I'd say it's one of the more affluent parts of Wigan. There's kind of a lot of wine bars and coffee shops. It's the type of place that's quite a close-knit community. There's a lot of families that have been in Orrell for a long time.
I grew up round here and it's always been, you know what I mean, a quiet place. It's a lot of older people and you've got the style of people what still, so recently, still tip the cap. You know what I mean? It's like an old-fashioned area. Everybody knows everybody.
Most people have lived here all their lives because really there's no reason to move away.
The parkland on the edge of the village has long been a draw for locals.
Orrell Water Park's a little local recreation spot.
Come on, doggy.
You get a lot of dog walkers coming here. A lot of people come just to kind of stretch the legs, walk the dog and get a little bit of fresh air.
I come here every day. A lot of dog walkers, families. Just a nice place to go for a change of scenery.
I mean, I've got 2 young kids. We take the kids around the park. A lot of people go fishing there.
There's always students around here in the lunchtime or the breaks. If the weather's nice, to come and sit on the benches. You follow the path up there. It can take you up to Winstanley College across the fields.
With its outstanding reputation, Winstanley College attracts students from across the Northwest.
Winstanley College is one of the top-rated sixth form colleges in the entire country. It draws ambitious, clever young people from across Greater Manchester, also parts of Lancashire and Merseyside.
It's always top standard. I mean, when I was growing up, everybody wanted to get into Winstanley.
It tends to get a lot of the kind of high achievers and people who do well in the GCSEs will go to Winstanley because they want to get the good grades to go to good universities as well.
And in 2017, 18-year-old Ellen Higginbottom was in her second year at Winstanley College.
Ellen Higginbottom was a very popular student. She came from the edge of Manchester and she was studying for her A-levels. She was an only child to Michael and Kay Higginbottom. She was a talented musician. She enjoyed listening to and performing music, and she also had a notable love of equestrian and horses.
Being a teenager at the start of adulthood, Ellen had a large social network around her.
She had a big group of friends and was extremely popular with everybody at the college. She also had a very devoted boyfriend. They were clearly in a very close relationship.
But life for the young couple was about to change.
It was a very pleasant summer's afternoon. Ellen had more or less completed that morning, I think, her final A-level exam. So you can imagine the sort of mood that she and her friends were in, a celebratory mood.
Ellen had gone into Winstanley College earlier on in the day, and because of Ellen's age, she was clearly independent. So when her particular exam was done, she went out for a walk, which the students often did. She left the college, walked over the field at the back, and entered into Orrell Water Park. It's a pleasant place to go for an afternoon stroll. Perfectly normal thing to do. You know, she just went about her business. Nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever.
Ellen had told her friends she was going for a walk at the water park, then would meet up with them after their exams. But she failed to return to college at the arranged time.
With her friends, she was apparently renowned at getting lost.
She sent a joking Snapchat message to her friends saying that she'd been here about 15, 20 minutes and was already lost.
But as the hours pass and Ellen fails to meet her friends or return home, concern grows.
It was becoming clear in the afternoon. She'd not made contact with any friends or family. She'd never been missing before, so it was unusual.
Had Ellen wanted some time alone? Had she got lost? Or had she met up with someone to celebrate after her exams? With her disappearance so out of character, her boyfriend organises a search for Ellen across the area.
A number of close friends and relatives travelled up to Orrell and actually took to the streets asking people if they had seen her.
Her family conducted their own inquiries and search as you would. They'd be thinking things like, has she fallen and got hurt or something of that nature.
News of Ellen's disappearance quickly spreads amongst the local community.
Word gets around very quickly, and there were scores of messages being posted on social media asking people to look for Ellen.
Facebook and Twitter was going off quite a lot. I mean, I'm only a couple of years older than she would be, so there was a lot of people who I knew that actually did kind of know her as well. And I can remember when she was missing, everyone being in fear.
Young people going missing, it's something that does cause a great deal of concern in the communities. It tends to trigger a bigger response because they tend to be more vulnerable.
But as the afternoon turns into evening, there's still no sign of Ellen.
By the evening, Ellen's friends and residents in the Orrell area were extremely concerned. It really struck a chord that a young woman of her age had just vanished.
When it became clear that they couldn't locate her, that's when police were contacted, which was around about 7:20 in the evening.
Her dad rang the police saying that his daughter hadn't come home from college, hadn't come back at the expected time, and it was extremely out of character.
Police take over the search for Ellen, and Detective Superintendent Howard Millington is made the senior investigating officer.
There are set what we call golden hour tasks to do. You know, has the person been injured and taken to hospital, so you check with local hospitals, check with family and friends, it's that kind of thing.
Ellen's phone is turned off, but police speak with her friends and discover that they all received the same message from her earlier in the day.
What we found, it was a Snapchat-type message sent by Ellen, which geolocated to Orrell Water Park. So we knew at a particular point in the afternoon where she was.
With Ellen last known to be in Orrell Water Park just before 2 p.m, police start an intensive search of the area.
You cannot expect what had happened to her had actually happened.
In the peaceful village of Orrell, concern is rising for the welfare of 18-year-old student Ellen Higginbottom after she seems to have vanished into thin air.
It would appear from messages retrieved from her friends' phones that she'd arranged to meet up with some of her friends in a post-exam, you know, letting hair down type of afternoon.
The college student had gone for a walk after finishing her final exam and was due to meet up with friends to celebrate. But she never turned up, and her phone is switched off. Local reporter Andrew Knoll finds himself at the centre of a developing story.
We do report on missing people fairly regularly. It's something that people are very keen to share and engage with. On the Friday evening, I remember a lot of people messaging on those, expressing concern about what was happening with Ellen, asking me for information, asking me what I'd heard about it, what the police had said about it.
As the night draws in, there is still no sign of Ellen. Her worried family desperately cling on for hope.
This was every young parent's nightmare, the anguish of where is she, what's happened to her. You think that your child has, you know, worked hard, got through the exam period, fully entitled to go off and let their hair down on a summer's afternoon. And, you know, the anxiety of sitting exams that all parents and all students feel is as nothing compared to what poor Ellen's parents will then have gone through.
Ellen had been at Orrell Water Park at 2 p.m. So police focused their attention on the surrounding area. Detective Superintendent Howard Millington oversaw the investigation.
So clearly the inquiries did focus on searching the area around Orrell Water Park. Although you've got to focus on where you think that person may be. It's important as a detective to keep an open mind so we don't get what we call confirmation bias creeping in and start to focus on the wrong things.
As night falls, police swarm the village and parklands in a desperate attempt to find Ellen.
On that Friday night, a huge operation swung into action to try and find Ellen.
I remember there was quite a police presence in the area.
There was police everywhere. Everyone knew there was something going on, but obviously didn't know exactly what it was.
After midnight, the police are left with no option but to take to the skies to search the surrounding fields and parkland.
I remember when I being woken up by the police helicopters in the early hours of the morning.
It's got thermal imaging and very high quality resolution cameras to search for people who may be missing, and it's high risk.
As the helicopter scans the ground below, suddenly something shows up.
The helicopter discovered a heat source. It was in a farmer's field adjacent to Orrell Water Park and some woodland.
The police helicopter, it picked up a heat source of a person that was running away.
Could this be Ellen? Had she become lost or hurt herself? The helicopter crew direct the officers towards the heat source.
The officers came down this path and closed in. At that particular time, there was some kind of standing crop in the field, probably around about 18 inches high.
The search team move into the crop field, and they quickly make a shocking find.
Tragically, the body of Ellen was discovered.
Police seal off the scene, and it's established that the laptop and mobile phone Ellen had with her were missing. Next to her, an abandoned spade is found.
I got the call from the night detective around about 2:45 in the morning. From the way it was described to me, I was immediately concerned that it was a case of homicide.
On the Saturday morning, Greater Manchester Police had launched a murder probe. And the immediate, urgent appeal for information was to be put out there through the press.
Greater Manchester Police are appealing for information after the body of missing student Ellen Higginbottom was found in Orrell Water Park in the early hours of the morning.
It was a huge shock for everyone around here because it's just such a quiet place, you know, and there aren't normally bad people about.
It's not something you expect in your village, is it? You know, it just doesn't happen until you wake up one morning and some poor girl's lost her life.
I mean, I've got kids myself, I've got a little girl myself, and I really was, I mean, all the family was, everybody around here was shocked.
It was very scary, you know, I've got grandchildren, and you think that that young girl, what she went through, you know, what she had to deal with in that situation must have been horrendous.
It's quite scary for everyone. You know, there's a lot of people walking dogs around here and just using Orrell Water Park, so the fact it was done in broad daylight in such a severe manner, I think, was what kind of shocked people a lot.
Since the early hours, Detective Superintendent Howard Millington has been at the scene.
Well, clearly, the main community concern is there a potential for another offence? You know, this is a horrific crime. You know, nobody's been yet arrested. What are the police doing about it? Around about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd actually deployed to the scene. My priority then was making sure that all the evidence that we could preserve at that time had been, and facilitate detailed searches with a view to apprehending the offender as quickly as possible.
With the crime scene secured and forensics searching for anything that could catch the killer, this popular beauty spot is suddenly put under the microscope.
I came down to Orrell Water Park the morning after Ellen Higginbottom's body had been discovered. It was here the police had a line of tape and an officer was standing there. There was no public access beyond this point. I remember the park actually being fairly quiet for a Saturday morning in the middle of summer. Word had obviously got out.
When I came out with the dog in the morning, I saw the police forensics, all the white gear.
There was a sense of alarm and numbness, I think, in the area.
The murder investigation is ramped up, and police launch an appeal to the public.
There wasn't an immediately obvious suspect, and so my media strategy was tailored around that. It was to include an appeal for information, to try and identify any as yet unknown witnesses or intelligence, to generate those kind of lines of inquiry.
Police need to establish who could have possibly wanted to cause harm to Ellen and why. With her phone and laptop missing, could this have been a robbery gone wrong? Or was it somebody closer to home?
I had several working hypotheses. Is this somebody in dispute with Ellen? You know, who'd she been in contact with? Was there anything we didn't know about Ellen that we needed to know? Anybody in conflict with her? Looking at computers belonging to Ellen, her phone, were there any communications with people we didn't know about? Well, the reality is, stranger attacks are extremely rare. The sad fact is that most people who are victims of homicide are actually killed by somebody who's known to them.
Suddenly, Ellen's friends and family are put under scrutiny.
The majority of murder victims are known to their killers.
The body of 18-year-old student Ellen Higginbottom has been found 10 hours after she went missing in the Lancashire village of Orrell. Greater Manchester Police start to look closely into Ellen's life.
In the wake of her body being found, immediately one of the questions is, did she know her killer? In the vast majority of cases, that is the case.
The questions I would be looking for is there anybody who she's been in dispute with or fallen out with? Now, that can be because they're friends or work colleagues or partners, family, anything of that nature. You know, does she have a partner? It transpired she had a boyfriend who'd assisted with the search.
Could any of these individuals be involved? With a list of people drawn up by police, everyone closely connected to Ellen is intensively questioned.
As a senior investigating officer, you know, keeping an open mind and making sure that every angle is covered is important. So we utilise a strategy called Trace, Investigate and Evaluate, where we look for things like alibis and where people were. And some of these people I was able to rule out as being potentially responsible because their alibi and movements and times showed that they couldn't be involved.
Ellen's family, boyfriend and inner circle are ruled out of the investigation completely, which leaves a terrifying prospect.
The reality was that this was a stranger who'd committed this horrific crime.
With a killer on the loose, the concern in the community grows.
I think people were in fear here that there's someone kind of walking among us in Orrell that could do something like that.
It affected the community pretty badly because there was lots of lone women that used to walk round the park with either the dogs, prams, stuff like that wouldn't go. They wouldn't actually go near the place.
The pressure is mounting on police to find those responsible.
When it became apparent that this was a stranger, in all likelihood, you know, the responsibility on my shoulders as the SIO, it's so intense. You know, I was in the white heat of the investigation. You know, Greater Manchester Police were resourcing and investigating this as thoroughly as possible to apprehend the very, very dangerous offender.
Post-mortem results arrive, which could offer clues to her attacker.
The cause of Ellen's death was two quite dreadful, very deep wounds, in particular to her neck, either one of which would have been sufficient to kill her.
DS Howard Millington said the severity of it and the ordeal that Ellen had gone through was unimaginable. It was a crime of very unusual severity and brutality.
Forensics also arrive from the scene, and the investigation takes an even more sinister turn.
But this was where Ellen was actually found. A little bit further this way, and there was a hole in the hedge. And we proved forensically, once the scientists had been down, that's where the attack took place, because of some of the blood samples and other material there. And it was clear she was dragged through into the field after the attack.
Ellen's clothing had been disturbed in a way that was consistent with deliberate interference with her garments.
Also, she had what looked like faint ligature mark around her wrist. And there was a belt, which was around her feet, ankle area, which we confirmed with Ellen's family didn't belong to Ellen. It was clearly a gent's belt.
The discovery leads police to consider a new theory.
So somewhere in this particular area, in these trees, and that's where the attack took place. And my belief was that this was ultimately a sexually motivated crime.
A speck of blood is picked up on the belt found at the scene, and it's sent off for DNA testing. The marks around Ellen's ankles also appear to suggest the belt was used to drag her from the attack site to the field where her body was found.
They were, in my view, looking to dispose of the body. There was a spade found nearby, so I think their intentions was to make sure she was buried and not found.
Confronted with the latest evidence, police appeal to the community for information, giving out details of Ellen's missing items. The plan works, and they are contacted by a concerned local.
A call was received in relation to a man acting strangely in certain circumstances. Ultimately, that led us to a piece of woodland not far away where there was a fire. And within the fire, the officers discovered a laptop that had been burnt. Now, we did know from the liaison with Ellen's family that she had a Lenovo laptop.
When the police went to the embers of the dying fire, they indeed found some of Ellen's possessions, her laptop and her keys, in what police quickly surmised was a not very effective attempt to destroy some evidence and cover traces that they'd been in possession of them.
Following the discovery of Ellen's missing belongings, burnt out in woodland in nearby Billinge, the police make a breakthrough.
An arrest was made. A man was in custody, being questioned on suspicion of murder.
The man in question is a 47-year-old from the Billinge area. Witnesses identified him trying to set fire to items in the woods. Could this be Ellen's killer? He's taken in and questioned by police and makes a startling admission.
When he was spoken to, was identified two other people who were partners and were also involved. And it transpired that these two individuals, along with the male that was arrested near this fire, had taken possession of Ellen's property, disposed of it.
Police, they made 2 further arrests in and around the Orrell area.
The 2 further suspects are arrested and taken into custody. A 30-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman. They are also from the Billinge area. Who are these 3 suspects? And what is their involvement in Ellen's death? As police dig further, they find no forensic evidence linking the trio to the murder scene. But then, police receive DNA results from the belt, which changes the course of the investigation.
A gent's belt that was near Ellen had both Ellen's DNA and also matched that of a man.
It matched a man called Mark Buckley.
Then I made the decision to declare him as a suspect and arrest him on suspicion of murder.
Police! You're under arrest on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something you're later align in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Would you like to make any response to that? Anything to say?
Pardon?
Anything to say to that?
Can you let me?
Yes, have you got keys on you? Or
Yeah.
the keys?
Yeah.
The keys are there, are they? Right. Okay. Well, we'll secure your property for you. Don't worry about that.
Police now have 4 suspects in custody.
We're going to take you back to Greater Manchester now for questioning.
But what is the connection between Mark Buckley and the trio who were accused of disposing of Ellen's belongings? Could Ellen's murder have been a group attack? Officers delve into Mark Buckley's background.
Mark Buckley was 52 years old. He had been staying with his mother in a nearby address. He did have previous convictions, but nothing that would have particularly flagged up that he was about to go out and commit this kind of offence.
He'd been arrested over an arson incident in which he'd set fire to a neighbour's car. There were a couple of other minor matters on his police record. A fray was one of them, but absolutely nothing on this sort of scale or severity.
Despite the forensic evidence against him, Mark Buckley denies any involvement with Ellen's murder. But police uncover CCTV evidence, which shows Buckley heading towards Orrell Water Park just after 1 p.m.
We managed to track some of his movements, and what that did show, he goes out in the early afternoon, and it was very warm on that day. He was wearing quite a heavy coat, long trousers, and he had like a green shopping carrier bag. And as he's going out, that looks fairly empty. We then see from the same camera Buckley coming back sometime later. When he comes back, This bag is clearly full. He's no longer wearing his coats, he's just wearing a vest, and he's just wearing shorts.
Despite being confronted with video evidence, Buckley continues to deny any involvement in Ellen's murder. But then, the other suspects in custody start to speak. Not only do they say they are friends with Buckley, but they describe how they came to have Ellen's possessions.
Transpired that Mark Buckley had been to the three offenders. He had passed on a rucksack with items including a laptop and keys that he'd stolen from Ellen. He had also sold on her mobile phone to one of them as well.
With the evidence against Buckley mounting up, he finally cracks.
When he was questioned by detectives, Buckley, in the end, confessed fairly quickly to killing Ellen.
Mark Buckley is charged on suspicion of Ellen Higginbottom's murder, while the other three suspects are charged with perverting the course of justice in knowingly disposing of evidence. But what actually happened on that fateful summer night when Ellen was killed? 52-year-old Mark Buckley has been charged with the murder of 18-year-old student Ellen Higginbottom, after he admitted to police that he was the man responsible.
Mark Buckley did admit that he killed her. He said hello and then dragged her off the path. Didn't give any explanation, clearly didn't want to admit any sexual elements.
He was fairly quickly contrite as to the killing itself, but he always maintained that there was no sexual activity or sexual motivation behind his crime.
After Mark Buckley allegedly sold on items stolen from Ellen after the murder took place, attention turns to the other three suspects from Billinge. Two men aged 47 and 30, and a 31-year-old woman.
Three other people were on charges related to assisting the offender or involvement in the crime.
They were charged with perverting the course of justice in that they got rid of evidence and handling the stolen laptop.
3 months after Ellen's murder, Mark Buckley appears at Manchester Crown Court to enter a formal plea. As he arrives in the courtroom, he cuts a subdued figure.
We went to the court, you just see somebody coming up the gantry. Yeah, it looked like he put a lot of weight on. He stared straight at me and my partner, and he walked to the front, and basically we heard what he'd done.
He showed very little reaction to the brief proceedings. He spoke only to confirm his name and address. The defence said that he expressed remorse and regret to his lawyer for what he had done, but could give very little explanation of his actions or motive.
Mark Buckley formally pleads guilty to the murder of Ellen Higginbottom. And when he returns to the court for sentencing, information about his past comes to light.
Mark Buckley grew up round here. Most of our regulars knew him. I knew him personally. He sometimes used to come in the pub.
I have known of him and known where he lived for, like, I'd say, what, 39 years, since I was about 10, because he used to live with his mum and his grandma next door to my nan.
Mark Buckley was a bit strange, really. He was a bit of a loner. There never seemed to be that much harm in him.
He, in the local area, was basically always a bit of an oddball, a bit of a loner. We'd always get stories about him, always doing something. In the local area, people were wary of him.
Buckley's past criminal convictions are revealed to the courtroom.
I can go back to August 2012. I got married and we was living near where Mark was living, and we come back the next morning to find out that he'd torched his next door neighbour's car.
I remember walking down that day and there was a vehicle, I think it was a Land Rover, that had been fired, and it was him who did it.
I'd heard that he'd had an argument with some family, to which he basically blew the car up with petrol, etc. And there was actually a crater in the floor where he'd done it.
In 2012, Buckley was sentenced to 2.5 years for arson and criminal damage. After serving his time, he came back to the village of Orrell.
When he actually came out of prison and he came in this pub, he was making out, when he walked through the door, like as a celebrity's come, he was still bragging about that and what he was going to do to people over that. He was still the same lad, unhinged.
Feeling disturbed by his return, the local community had come together to raise their concerns with the police.
People was basically scared of him coming in the area.
As a result, police relocate Buckley to nearby Preston. But despite this, the court hears how he still found a way of returning to his childhood village of Orrell.
I honestly believe that he was saying he was coming to see his mother, but not making out that he was staying over here. So the Preston flat what he had was vacated, and then he was coming here, staying with his mother for 3, 4, 5 days sometimes. A lot of people was anxious and scared about that.
Tragically, the community's fear and suspicions around Buckley come into fruition on the morning of the 16th of June, 2017, when Buckley enters Orrell Water Park at 5:30 a.m.
Buckley had been in the park probably from almost first light that day. Early morning dog walkers recall seeing Buckley.
Mark Buckley, police discovered, had been in the area for quite some time. He had been scoping out the area on the Friday.
Basically, Mark was on the prowl round the water park, and different people had come forward saying an individual was preying on young women.
He approached a number of women who were walking alone and then let them go.
Several hours later, Buckley returns home, but decides to revisit the park again at 1 p.m, perhaps more determined to find a victim. By chance, Ellen Higginbottom has just finished her final exam and enters the park at 2 p.m. She had no idea what would be waiting for her.
On that afternoon, he selected his victim as Ellen Higginbottom when she wandered alone into the water park. She was a very petite girl. She stood 5'4". She was very slightly built, and he was able to overpower her very easily.
After the murder, which we believe took place probably around 2:30 in the afternoon, it would seem that he was still in the vicinity of the park. He tried to get rid of what would have been heavily blood-stained clothing.
The court hears from witnesses who saw Buckley in the park that afternoon with scratches across his body.
Eyewitnesses recall him making some excuse that he was rather hot and bothered because he'd had a bit of an episode with the dog, and some of the scratches, which were probably poor Ellen's defensive actions that had caused those, he blamed on getting tangled up with the bushes in his lead and his dog.
2 hours after Ellen's murder, Buckley finally returns home wearing only shorts and a vest, while carrying a bag believed to contain his blood-stained clothing, as well as Ellen's stolen belongings. Buckley then sells the items to his friends, the trio from Billinge, claiming he found them in the park.
It became clear that these people used drugs. It was a chance to make some money, and ultimately some of the money that they received for items that, you know, they'd taken possession of was spent on drugs, and it was as simple as that, really.
And later that night, as news of Ellen's disappearance was spreading through the village, Buckley returns to the scene of the crime.
It would appear that Buckley decided to go back later to try to hide Ellen's body. He'd gone back with a spade, and the police were still at that stage searching for Ellen. His activities in the park registered on a heat-seeking camera that the police were deploying during their search. He was seen effectively by the police in what we believe was an attempt to make a better job at hiding poor Ellen's body in the undergrowth.
The prosecution puts its theory to the court as to what lay behind Buckley's crime.
When we presented the case at the Crown Court, we maintained that there was a sexual element to the crime. Mark Buckley denied and continued to deny throughout that there was any sexual motivation or activity associated with the killing.
But it's revealed to the courtroom that following searches of Buckley's address, police discovered a bag.
That bag was recovered from inside a bin. It was heavily blood-stained inside. And it also, in the bottom of it, was still what I can only describe as a rape kit.
He was found to be in possession of condoms and lubricants and other unsavoury items in a carrier bag he had with him. So we left the court in no doubt that this was sexually linked, although there was no charge of rape or indecent assault, sexual assault or anything of that nature.
And the court also hears further shocking evidence from that fateful afternoon.
A witness actually came forward to say they heard what sounded like a man and a woman having sex within the trees. And unbeknown to that particular witness, I'm confident that that was Buckley assaulting Ellen. I'm confident about that because of the time and particularly the location. The location was subsequently identified as the attack site.
On the 14th of September 2017, the judge imposes his sentence and accepts there was a sexual motivation to the murder. Buckley is sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 31 years behind bars.
We went to the court. As he was walking down to the thing, you seen him just basically go and puff down. And I honestly don't think he's got any remorse.
I think the sentence Mark got was really a bit of a disgrace. What he did was absolutely disgusting, and he should never be allowed out in the community again.
After pleading guilty to perverting the course of justice, the 47-year-old man from Billinge is given a suspended 2-year sentence and ordered to do unpaid work. The couple, also from Billinge, are sentenced, with the 30-year-old man receiving 20 months behind bars, while the 31-year-old woman is given a 16-month suspended sentence.
He'd lied to the police, they'll get rid of property and handling stolen goods. And, you know, to behave like that, knowing full well what Buckley had actually done, and still get engaged in that, in destroying evidence and handling Ellen's belongings, is actually pretty despicable in my book.
With Mark Buckley now behind bars, the community of Orrell tried to come to terms with what happened on their doorstep.
It did change Orrell. It's not just what he's done to the girl. The people going to the college, all her family, all her friends.
God knows what that family must have gone through. Really, you know what I mean? It's not, you have kids and basically the kids bury you. You don't bury your kids, you know what I mean?
I recall Mike and Kay being relieved, I think, not pleased. I think they were satisfied that Ellen's killer had been brought to justice.
And in the centre of Orrell sits a lasting memory to the popular student who once had her whole life ahead of her.
The community, after Ellen Higginbottom's death, came together and created a garden. It pays tribute to Ellen, her love of nature and animals, and there is a little library contained within it as well, where people can just leave spare books and can take books as well, which I think it was felt would be fitting to someone who loved her studies and would clearly have probably gone on to university and then a professional career of some kind.